What it do, anime crew? Hey man, listen, today I'm going to be ranting about the house that Jack built because I just finished it. It is a 2018 horror movie directed by Lars von Trier, who is unfortunately the director of what's probably my favorite non-animated movie, Dancer in the Dark, which fucking sucks because he is a genuine, real-life piece of shit. He has a lot of very credible accusations levied at him by numerous people spanning numerous productions, an extremely checkered past with some very concerning interviews, all stuff that I don't totally want to get into here because it's not really important to the discussion of the movie, but just know it's all very credible, and this guy is a real-life piece of shit for the most part, which is why it's so unfortunate that I find his style so interesting, not in the sense that I feel bad for necessarily supporting. I mean, he's already, rich beyond belief and whatever. I don't really think I'm having an effect on that. But it's just, I don't know. It feels almost personal. It's like I can't call myself a fan, and maybe that's more enlightening to me and an unhealthy idolization of some of these creators in a sort of parasocial sense, and my frustration with not being able to fully idolize Lars von Trier. Maybe says something interesting about the Guru. I don't know. But I'm going to talk about this movie because it was very self-effacing, definitely some self-criticism from Lars von Trier. It was a satire, basically a 2.5 hour long movie from the perspective of a serial killer, psychopath, just glazing himself. And so when you look at something like actual serial killers, or I guess more directly perpetrators of mass shootings, the psychology is extremely well understood. There is a profound sense of entitlement or birthright to certain things, and there's a really strong desire to let your impact be known, to make yourself be remembered, to just exert your will onto other people and to prove to the world that you really exist. It's like a giant call for attention in a very self-aggrandizing way. Trying to go out with a bang and make all those people remember who you are and feel your pain and have it all not be for nothing. So it's actually it's the most antisocial behavior ever, but it's rooted in a dysfunction and just fervorous need for social and interpersonal validation. And that's just sort of the folly of it. That's just the sad part. A lot of people make it out to be, and I'm sure there have been maybe some killers throughout history who had weirder and more fringe and maybe unique motivations for what they did. But generally speaking, it gets overly sensationalized and glorified in media a lot, how complex and broken and somehow misunderstood these people are, when really it all stems from generally a pretty similar psychology that can generally be prevented in very similar ways. It's not really obviously something that anybody should sensationalize. Not that I call for that type of media not to exist, but just generally in terms of how people engage with this sort of media. And that's sort of the essence of what this movie is, I think. It's the story of Jack telling his giving his grand manifesto and reading it off and talking about the ethos behind his killings and what makes them art and what makes them masterful and what makes them unique and what makes him this Christ-like figure. And all the while there's an actually great no, he wasn't the poet. There's this narrator guy who at times I believe acts as sort of an audience stand-in, sort of trying to reconcile with the fact that he kind of gets a kick out of Jack's twisted stories, but then also making sure to draw the line at a certain point and chastise him for his extreme nihilism, which, probably points to a lot of the critiques that Lars von Trier, his edgelord ass, has gotten over the years. His movies are just pure misery. They're pure torture porn, misery porn, whatever you want to call it. But I think they have a remarkably unique and impactful tone and texture, though the basis is hyper nihilistic for sure. Everything about Jack is about control and proving to himself that he has influence over other people. When he sees he's extremely OCD and compulsive, And so he has like intrusive thoughts, as we all do, but for him not to be able to act on his intrusive thought, I believe, is a loss. Like he thinks that it proves that he lacks control and that he lacks power and that he lacks influence if he doesn't just do whatever he wants all the time. So when he has these sadistic urges to like cut a duck's foot off and then set it back into the water, or in the words of Kexi, chop a white woman into like a million pieces, he's, you know, he's gonna do it. He's just gonna do it. He's gonna do it every time, because he sees anything else as a adulteration of his personhood and artistic vision. He's like, that anything else is just not being authentic to his true self. When really, it's not art. It's just a downward spiral into simple, crude hedonism. You know, there's a really good line at the end that my friend pointed out to me when I was talking to him about it briefly over text right after I finished it. Towards the end, where it turns out that Jack never really built the house, and the audience, the narrator sitting back there behind him, and he goes, where's the house? Wasn't Jack supposed to build a house? And it's like, you went this entire story with all of this, you know, moral grandstanding and like self-righteousness and weird self-veneration from Jack. And it's like, really his artistic vision never amounted into any sort of grander goal. It was just sort of thrill-seeking and nihilistically thrashing about in the same exact cycle on repeat. Like, he never really developed very much from his first kill to his 68th kill, 65th kill, whatever it was. He didn't really change much from those 2 points, as much as he wants to imply otherwise. The narrator criticizes him for things such as, you know, overly victimizing women and portraying them generally as stupid in his recounting of these events, to which Jack, you know, quickly deflects, though it is supposed to be clear within the subtext that he really does. Like, he says, oh, I had a romance, but then he looks into his romance and it's literally just him with a girl who he doesn't respect, who he thinks is simple, who he finds easy to manipulate, who he emotionally manipulates for fun, before murdering her ultimately, and like mutilating her, like doing all this crazy stuff. It's just, it's clearly fake. He clearly sees them as people who are easier to control. And of course, with Jack, it all comes back to affirming his own sense of control and superiority to everyone around them, to everyone around him. He wants sycophants. He wants people who will believe him and buy into his will. And he sees women as more malleable or easier to manipulate, and then also physically, you know, they're easier victims or whatever, and it makes him feel more powerful inherently. He's just like really exceptionally twisted, but that is a direct criticism that I know for a fact Lars von Trier's got, and that's an exact criticism that I've legitimately thought about Lars von Trier. I'm like, this guy's a little bit weird about women. This guy's a little bit weird about women and sex, especially when you bring to light some of the real life allegations. Credible allegations, let me say, that have been directed at him. It is very weird, and that is a very weird thing. And it's almost like he's admitting that this is almost like just like a giant way of saying, you know what, guys, I do suck. I'm not as smart as I think I am. It was all, you know, I want to be seen as this great artist, but really the direction that my art goes in spirals down towards a nothingness and a void that is entirely pointless, despite what I want to believe and what I want to tell people. I discredit people's opinions because I think they're stupid or lesser than me without actually listening to them. And I can't stand the idea of feeling like just another person, because if I did, I'd have to wrangle with the fact that I am dysfunctional and therefore, by some metrics and perspectives, just an inferior version of a regular old person. I'm not like some other different category that's totally misunderstood by society and largely unprecedented and some sort of ubermensch-like figure ready to bring upon the next burgeoning era of human consciousness and artistic development. It's like, I don't know that he clearly this is a bit satirical. This is a bit of like a extremely dark comedy. more than it is horror in a lot of ways. Though it is like there's a lot of like gore and shock value and kills and sadism. Like there's a lot of like horror stuff going on here, but it is sort of ultimately a satire and a dark comedy. He goes into, for example, the family unit and how he ends up seeking out a family. Speaking of Jack here, just so that he can have control over the kids and then eventually, like kill them. Because that's like his thing. It all comes back down to control. And so he's like, I want a relationship so I can control a woman more intimately before I just inevitably kill her. I want a family so that I can raise these kids and have total control over them until, he inevitably kills them, and then he kills the mom, and he goes around, kills everybody, does whatever the hell he wants with total impunity. And the entire time, the biggest, like, most glaring thing about his character that's evident from, like, the very beginning is that he wants to get caught. Because, as I said, this is all attention-seeking behavior at the end of the day. Like, he wants to go out, he wants to... like, he would probably say he wants to enlighten people and open their eyes to the reality of human nature and art. But in reality, he just wants credit, he wants praise, and he wants some sort of external validation. He actually mentions explicitly somebody's purpose is not within life, but after it. Which is just totally the essence of not wanting to be forgotten and trying to immortalize your name through horrific acts of mass violence, that psychology that's so prevalent and well documented. It's like he wants to be a great man, he wants to be an icon, a symbol that will be remembered because he simply lacks attention and he's like an enormous narcissist. And then it's also psychopathy, OCD, narcissism. There's like a lot of stuff at play here. There's a lot of stuff at play, and he just ends up becoming the worst concoction of horrible person you can possibly imagine. Which is interesting when you think of this as like a self-facing critique of Lars von Trier's self. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other things you could put through the lens of criticism towards LVT. This is definitely his style of movie, by the way. There's a lot of harsh, like sudden jump cuts, shaky handheld camera moments, sharp contrasts between diegetically impossible shots, like in Dancer in the Dark, like defying dogma, and more grounded signature dogma filmmaking, specifically when they're descending into hell and there's like these grand images of Jack being bathed in blood or crawling down a ladder on a wall made of like contorting corpses and like all this stuff. And it's like, it's supposed to juxtapose how he sees himself and how he sees this grand act of him going down to hell versus the actual physical reality of what it is, which is just a shaky cam in like some dingy cave somewhere with like some old guy. And that was one of the more powerful moments in the movie to me, for sure. Along with like some stuff like there's just like absolutely horrible unhinged things that Jack does. Like there's one lady who he's killing and he doesn't choke her for long enough, and then she like comes back and then he like half-heartedly resuscitates her so that he can choke her again, but like properly. Just like absolute like the worst shit ever. And he genuinely does have OCD, but when he says these things, he's like, I have this urge inside of me that I simply need to fulfill. Like most other people would never have it. He uses this metaphor of the light, and he's like, when a man stands under the lamppost, his shadow is at its densest, and then if he's walking to another lamppost, there's the satisfaction and the fear, and they're dragging each other, and it's like this extended metaphor for his temptation. And the narrator just says, yeah, that that's cool and all, but it can just be applied easily to any form of addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction, literally anything has that same basic psychological framework. You haven't actually discovered anything new. You're just sort of saying it pretentiously. And I think that's probably the number one thing Lars von Trier is afraid of, that he's just digging to the bottom of nowhere and not actually saying anything new. Even though it sort of feels transgressive, it feels like he's doing something. He's getting a reaction out of people. Like, that's the thing. The criticism he's undoubtedly gotten the most is that you're just trying to get a reaction. This is just shock value. This is just schlock. And this is sort of him sitting with the fact, he's like, maybe to some extent this is true. Maybe I am just trying to get a reaction out of people, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, no, Jack actually has very extreme OCD. He does have absolutely unhinged criminal urges and psychopathy, but at the end of the day, he's just like some loser who at the finale of the movie lets his curiosity get the better of him, falls down into the deepest circle of hell, and then gets played for a joke as they needle drop "Hit the Road, Jack," that old song, for the end credits, which was, I laughed out loud actually when I saw that at the end of this dramatic ass movie, showing the most vile, despicable character I've ever seen, just getting hit with a, all right, get out of here. You don't have any place here, so let's get going. And yeah, it's interesting. Jack, like, on some level, realizes he can't fit into society and knows he should leave, and he's like begging for it to happen, but until then, he's just there's no structure of anything around him, so he's just having like this nihilistic playground thrill-seeking fun. But in the midst of that, he's creating nothing. There's no structure, it's just wild emotion, and a lot of people mistake the raw emotions expressed by art with the essence of art itself. People think that that art is just raw emotions, unfiltered, not really critically considered through any lens like that. That's just never what it's been. That's not what it represents. That's not what has benefited people throughout history. That is a very important part of it, is communicating emotions that you can't necessarily do through words for the sake of trying to communicate a sort of grander idea. Isn't the right word for it, but to communicate yourself. But ultimately, art is communication in a way that is supposed to be something of a two-way street, in my opinion. If you put it out publicly for people to react to it, art is communication. So if you simply want to go out in a blaze of art and die and not be able to respond to anything afterwards, I don't know that that's really great art. It's just attention seeking. If you don't actually have anything to communicate and you're not actually willing to communicate, at that point it's just masturbation. So yeah, that's pretty much the thoughts I had on the house that Jack built. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Was it better than Chainsaw Man Reze Arc? Probably. I don't know.